Scotland. I am the detailed in NFDRS program lead for the Forest Service. It's a one-year term position. And so my main program area is FEMS and helping out with the design team with that, WIMS and NFDRS with the Forest Service. Jen Croft was the holding the position prior to me, and then also Shelby Law had been helping out in the design of FEMS. So I've kind of morphed into both of those positions. And so I just wanted to continue on with the conversations that Jen was doing over the past, I guess, year for the NFDRS solutions and updates. And I just wanted to keep moving on with that. I thought it was a good way to reach out to the field in a consolidated manner with everything that we've got moving and going forward with both FEMS and WIMS. So I'm going to kind of keep this as an open forum. It's my first go at this. So I wanted to, start working through some of the updates that we have in WIMS, what's been going on with that, try and capture some potential issues that users are having, if there's any out there still, and then going to be discussing and showing FEMS, seeing what's working well with FEMS, what's been giving us some headaches, and then just give you the future roadmap of where FEMS is going towards. So unfortunately, I don't have anybody else helping present for this meeting, so you're going to be stuck with my talking head for the hour. And honestly, with the amount of material I have, and I'm guessing what the discussions that we'll have, it will probably be about the full hour for this this week, or this month. So let me start out with WIMS, because WIMS is where we are still operating in. That's the world that we live in for everything fire danger. And so I've sent out a couple of emails about some best practices that Matt Jolly has recommended. And so I wanted to kind of give some updates on where WIMS is at and what's happening. So first off, there is an update occurring, hopefully by the end of this month. It'll be WIMS 5.50, and that is live in the testing environment. So if you want to get an idea of what that update is going to look like, you can run into the testing environment through INAP, and you'll be able to see all the changes that are going to be in the production version here shortly. So first off, I wanted to share with you is the one of the main updates and pushes that they have done. Give me 1 second, just need to move some stuff around. That way I can keep up on the chat and everything as well. Is what they're calling the non-matrix decision module. So here we are in the testing environment, and there is both a matrix and non-matrix decision module that is live, or the matrix version of the decision module is live in production, but they just added in the non-matrix version of this. So what this looks like is, if you go to FastPath FDOP, you can add in your FDOP decision points, and it'll start populating your percentile or your values for the day based on staffing levels or adjective ratings or PAL ratings, industrial precautions, any ratings that you want to. These will populate. So you can, if you don't want to have the standard information that's populated right out of WIMS, you can go ahead and do those changes in WIMS this way. So I just want to give you a quick example of what these look like. And so this is considered a non-matrix decision support tree. So in this example, I'm giving two indices. I wanted to see 6 different rankings. I used a couple of different SIGs that were already developed. You can summarize the data. You can either use the minimum, the maximum, or the median. And then you give your adjective or some ranking levels. So in this example, I was just, messing around with some of the California PAL, if PAL ratings, and just kind of utilizing those adjective ratings. And then having the two different indices that are out there, and I made up some breakpoints. And so what it's going to do is going to take the maximum value for those days, and this will be how then you can populate this. So for the dispatch arena out there, or any of the fire program that want to be able to have the values calculated out for, if PAL, again, if you want to make this into, if you had a ranking such as this where it's greater than, so if you wanted like the maximum value of this between these two indices, it's going to use the max. If I want the minimum value, then I would choose this. So I know some places in the Great Lakes, they utilize these indices for summertime staffing. Hey, we want the highest of these two ratings. This is what this will do. And then we'll be able to view that later on. I also wanted to show you and just do the reminder, if we wanted to do, well, I can't change right now. I would have to change to the matrix style, but the matrix is more familiar to, well, let me just go to it and I'll show you what it looks like. So give me 1 second and we'll just make a new one here. And sorry, I'm just not sure how many people have actually seen this, so I want to make sure I go over this with everyone. So I'm going to add a new fire plan. We will do demo and demo. We'll see if it'll let me do that. And I want to edit that. And oh, come on. So just giving an example of what a matrix looks like. So number of access decisions, we'll do 4 and 4, and I'll do test and test, and I create the decision matrix. And on this, you can see then you can change, you can add your matrices between what you want, and it'll give you your decision breakpoints. To then view those, you go into, and I just want to make sure I get this one right, DD unit. No, come on now. And so I can do examples of this, and it will show me here are the decision breakpoints for that SIG. And so again, this is going to be helpful, I think, for a lot. So in testing environment, you are not able to look at the forecast data, but once this goes live, forecast data is populated. So if you do use the FDOP in production and you use either the matrix or the non-matrix version decision classes, you can look at both your forecast and observed and forecasted information for those decision modules. So one of the big updates that's coming around in the next unit, again, the matrix version is already available and ready for use. The non-matrix decision will be the one that's added into this release. Let's see here. Within this, they will also be adding GSI herbaceous and NFDRS to the herbaceous and woody into the decision matrix modules. So those are part of, if you want to add the GSI as a breakpoint, you can do that. They are changing in the, let's see here. Let's see. They are changing in DIDM. I believe is where it's going to be. I want to make sure they are adding in here the fuel temperature. Fuel temperature will be shown in Fahrenheit. It was shown in Celsius. And so where that is helpful is if you are unsure if the indices are calculating properly, or you want to know what the differences between, you're seeing some differences between Fire Family Plus and what WIMS may be producing, you can verify them very easy this route. So that's why they did change that, so you don't have to worry about doing those calculations. They changed the fuel temperature to be displayed in Fahrenheit. Let's see here. They also fixed the NFDRS calculation. Let me just want to read, make sure I get this correct. For the ENRR 16V, W, and X, so that's now going to be, the recalculation is going to be processed through, and that was for one of the GSI fixes that happened earlier this year. What was happening with the GSI is prior, let's see here. The GSI was supposed to be taking the any live fuel moisture and not calculating in anything that was considered green for those live fuels. And so that fuel loading was supposed to be not transferred into the dead fuels. There was an error, a calculation error inside the script that was found in late June that had been occurring for a couple of years, that the GSI was not actually being factored in for during green up season. So it was basically taking any fuel loading that was live, that was considered unburnable, and transferring that into the cured or Nelson side. So we were getting exaggerated data during the green up season time of year. So that fix has been processed, and that will be dropped in with this update as well. The S for recalculation, so he fixed not displaying the fuel model. So any of those issues, I know there's been quite a bit of this issue over the past few years. When you added a new station, you were not able to add the new fuel models. So those you would come up with, and they would only have the legacy fuel models, and you'd have to call up the help desk and get that actually fixed through Neil. That has been fixed. So as you make a new station now, the update or the new fuel models will be populated, so you can add those and continue on with your station development. The S observation types are going to be removed, so we're no longer going to be you can actually do an S recalculation in the ENRR page. So if there are stations that have S in the observation type, those will then be able to be recalculated, and only allowing the change in the observation type, it's going to be the removal of S. So you'll only be able to change from a type O at that point, and not allowing to change to type S for both E observation and new observation. Let's see here. fixed display of the hourly precip when the rain gauge value is not available. So there was an issue with the rain gauge when it wasn't being shown, that it would show as a 0, and now I think he just has dashes or blanks in there instead. So that's going to be updated. And let's see here. The only a couple other big ones are when you did in the comp. So for those who use the comp fast track, let's see here. There was a problem with a lot of the data, and that would be when you would try and do a forecast versus it would give you the no data available. And what was happening is that behind the scenes, this was not. It was looking for the RS time frame, and he changed it to making sure that it was looking for the forecast for those stations that were then receiving at 1200 hours. It would be looking for the 1200 hour observation, and but the forecast data would only come in at 1300, so it would show as like no data was available. So he did adjust that. So now you should be able to look at your forecast data for stations even if they are not at the 1300 hour regularly scheduled time frame. And then let's see here, a couple of other changes. Let's see here. Automatically add station sensors. So when you add a new station, if the station was brought in from, or if WIFME data was put in, the station sensors would have to be manually entered in through the help desk, and he changed that around so that it's actually be pulling in the station information from the WIFME API. So that should help things out a little bit as well. And then for those in Alaska and Hawaii, he is fixing the time zone setting so that you are no longer the 1 hour off for part of the year, because the observations were calculating for daylight savings time, and those two states did not actually switch over. So those are a couple of changes. Those are the big changes that are coming out with the 5.50 release. And I know I just gave a ton of information, so I'm going to take a breather for 1 second and see if people have questions on it.
Hey, Scott, this is Dan. So I guess my question goes back to the S-type OBS. Are our dispatches that had that issue going to have to go back and manually recalculate that, or is the recalculation going to be done for them? I wasn't clear on that.
Yep. So those stations that had it done, or they had S observations, the recalculations were done for them for this year. Prior to this year, they're going to have to go back and redo them for anything prior to January 1st of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Will all that great info be provided in the release notes? Yes, it should be. I believe all that information Neil posts on the WIMS release notes. And if not, reach out to me. I'll make sure we get it out there. Let's see here. All right. Anything else on? Yeah, I see a hand raise. I don't have my people lined up.
Hey, Scott, Steve Larrabee. I'm trying to raise my hand. I don't know if I can.
Yep, you got it.
Will the release notes have any advice about recalcs and, resetting reanalysis and setting decision points? Whether those kinds of changes were significant enough, and also whether those same errors were affecting Fire Family Plus outputs.
So first part, will the release notes have, I don't know if he's going to add the information on what those recalcs are going to look like, and if they need to get done and how significant they are. I don't think that he has added that in. Neil doesn't really add that kind of information. That's more from Matt's side of things. If you have specific questions on it, maybe you and I can chat later on. I'm not exactly positive what you're thinking. So I want to make sure I'm getting the right answer from you, or getting you the right answer.
Okay, yeah, we could talk more about it. I think the field's just generally going to consume, those notes or hear about them or just recognize that a change came along. And of course, naturally they'll wonder if they have to do anything, or is this just better data coming out on a daily basis, or if they need to back up and do something different with their plans or some of their management applications.
Yeah, for the most part, for the big changes that were that happened, so like the GSI change, Neil did a recalc to the whole system in late June. And so he did that. It took him a couple days, but he recalculated the entire system prior to from January 1 of this year to current date. And then everything was getting calculated correctly since that time. The field will need to go back and do recalcs prior to January 1 for the GSI issue, though. Yeah, to do that. And so I'll have to make sure, I guess, we get those notes out there. That's a great point, Steve. I'll make sure I capture that and see if we can get that added into the either release notes, or I'll have to send that out. I'm trying to send out some of those general best practices to the field. So. Any other questions on WIMS? All right. Okay, I am going to, I was going to do a quick walkthrough of FEMS, but my computer is acting up at the moment. So let's see if we can do this. If not, I'm just going to give you some quick updates the best I can on FEMS without doing the full walkthrough. I don't want to give you the non-production version of it because you'll go, wait, mine doesn't show that. All right, so first off, with FEMS, let's see here. Where are we at? Where are we going? So we just released FEMS 1.0 that had all of the weather data. It had all the weather data associated with it. And give me one second. I'm going to try, and I think what's going on is my VPN is goofing me up here. I hope I don't lose everybody. Give it a shot. I shouldn't. So 1.0 we released. It had all the weather data, the weather information that we're getting. Let's talk a little bit of the nuts and bolts behind the scenes of the weather data from FEMS. So the weather we're pulling from is all of our RAWS stations that are populated within WIFME. Okay, right now it's just the permanent fire stations out of WIFME is what's visible in FEMS. The weather data that is being displayed is from DRI. So DRI, holds a copy of all of our data, all of our weather observations. He then went through and did gap filled and backdated all of our weather information back to the year 2020. And I'm sorry, back to year 2000. So 22 years of data, right? We have for all stations. So if the station existed, it didn't come into existence until 2015, you can look at data all the way back to the year 2000, even though the station was not there. So this is what's referred to as the gap-filled data, okay, or backfilled data. He also then, if there were missing observations during when the weather station, say a weather station did exist all the way back to that time frame, but it was missing, you know, an observation here, an observation there, or it was missing a month of data, they did what's then called the gap fill, and they take their parameters that their algorithms and populated, you know, the data best that they could from nearby gridded weather information and populated that observation type. So that is that is what we're actually seeing, the behind the scenes of the weather data inside FEMS. So from 2000 and from beginning of this year, January 1, 23, until current date, we are pulling directly from WIFME. So those are the solid observations that we have from WIFME for this year. So that is all getting pulled in, and this is where some of the problems are occurring. So I want to give the background of it. It's getting pulled in, and it's being displayed in UTC. So the historical information prior to this year, again, is that DRI weather information. It's both observations and gap filled and backfilled data that is being brought in at local station time. Okay, so those two, that information wasn't caught until the release. And so when you go to, when any of the users goes to bring in either a CSV or download a CSV file that includes any historical data, you know, if you log in and download data for the past, you know, 5-10 years, you are getting a mixture of information of dates. So your observations are going to change basically that time frame on the CSV and the FW21 file. What that does is it basically, say you live on the East Coast, you are now showing that your observations for this current year are 4 hours later in the day. So instead of it being noon, it's showing that noon observation at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can see where this problem occurs, that now you look at all the historical data in Fire Family Plus, you don't realize this is occurring. And all of your historical trends from, say, 2000 to this year are all lining up really well. And then all of a sudden, everything, the data from this year looks really low. Like, okay, you're like, well, this doesn't even match. Well, that's because the times are off by UTC. So right now, the recommendation is you can use the information for historical purposes. Do not add in this year, but understand also that you're utilizing gap-filled and backfilled weather data that has not been fully field tested yet and verified to see what those effects look like. We have been seeing some discrepancies thanks to some individuals doing some work around the country. There is some smoothing of some of the extreme weather events that have occurred that is changing where the climatology information is. And so you can use the information, use the data, but just use it with a lot of caution and understand of what we're getting at. So, as far as actually making decisions, do some verification between what your current data set may or looked like prior to utilizing the FEMS data and what the FEMS data is. And you can do your verification on your own if you would like. We're working on getting individual review done, and we are also working on trying to set up an official independent review. But until that time frame occurs, just understand what you have and don't go with it and say this is the best information that's out there, because it's new data yet, and we haven't fully, as an organization, and I mean this as a fire community, we don't fully understand the effects of what the gap looks like at this time. So we are working on it, and I'm going to stop there because I just gave a lot of information and see if people have questions on that before I get into the FEMS demo.
Hey, Scott, not really a question, just kind of a comment. I think that For a lot of people that have seen abnormalities in the past and maybe have gotten some help from either like Matt or Faith Ann or something, there's always kind of a process of trying to weed things out, right? And I know I've done it where I thought I saw something that was causing it, and it really wasn't. It was like another thing. And I think with a lot of the conversations that have been going on lately, I think it's just important to understand that just keep your mind flexible, I guess, around the idea that um, there's a lot up in the air, right? So this is one thing, and did this one thing maybe impact something that you thought you were seeing before? Like I said, just kind of a comment. I think it's not really a new thing. It just involves a new application.
Yep. Thank you, Travis. And Steve, you have a question?
Yep. Sorry, I can't see if my
No,
hand's
it's
up or
okay.
not.
Yeah.
So, Scott, as you know, we've kind of been talking on the side, some of us, and I'm looking at the names of the folks in this group, and these are some of our best folks. As they, if they choose to continue to work with the DRI data and FEMS, and if they encounter problems, or if they kind of feel like it's good, at least at this point, until we can think of something a little more formal, how would you want them to share that experience with the broader community or with you, so that you can decide, if there's a trend or a pattern that's worth trying to get the word out, so folks aren't, feeling compelled to report the same thing over and over. But as you know,
Yep.
this communication is important, and we don't have a good plan. But what do you want us to do in the interim?
Yeah, right now, so we're working on getting on the FEM page we've discussed how to make this happen. We've talked with some of the folks in WFTS because they had their feedback button, and you could just provide them direct feedback. It went to website. We're also working on getting a form developed, or went to an email address. We're also working on getting a form developed that we can just provide, hey, give us some feedback, and it'll come back to us directly that way. So we also have the help desk available. That's not necessarily a great way to provide individual feedback. Worst, until we get that going right now, if you're doing some analysis and you're seeing good, seeing either good or bad, please email me, email Travis. My information is provided on the FEMS website. It's provided on the FEMS portal page. So until we get that fully established, that's going to be your best route for right now. And I'm trying to disseminate that the best that we can. Matt and I have come up, trying to figure out a way of just even meeting with the community and in sharing information as a broader community. I'm trying to get a Teams SharePoint site developed so that we can do that. There's also been talks about getting like a blog available for us. I know Slack was being used from Matt for a while, and that kind of fell on the wayside. So we're trying to explore other options to make sure that we can, have these discussions that are ongoing and capturing, relevant issues, so that hopefully in the end, as one person's finding things and another person can help out another. I mean, that we can really be more of a community-based problem solvers and being able to search through the information that way, as opposed to waiting for large webinars like this or emails to come out. So yeah, that's Steve. And again, we're in the process of it, or I'm in the process of it. Unfortunately, just a one-man show at the office here. So, but trying as best I can to get all the solutions and all the ideas out that people have, and there's a lot of them. So, Robin, see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
So yeah, I just kind of wanted to chime in here a little bit with what the data are themselves. I mean, this is the DRI data set is a gridded data set, right? And we're plucking points from a grid. So I think understanding what it is we're utilizing is going to be helpful a little bit with perspective. A grid is spatial and complete, right? Across the whole US, points are not. And so when you model that for the gap filled, the same point that is the grid box that aligns with the raw station that sits in that grid box will not be the same exact observation, right? Because these are two different data sets. So just just wanting folks to understand that when you pluck a point out of a grid, it will not necessarily align exactly with that grid box, because that grid box is a lot broader than what that point is. And it's created for the spatial integrity across the nation. So, so I just kind of want to put that out there as perspective when we're looking at this and saying what's good and what's bad, kind of knowing like what the data are that we're evaluating.
Thank you, Evan. That's great point that you bring up. Steve?
Yeah, but that being said, I mean, I think the FW21s will use the raws observations unless they've been gap filled or backfilled. Is that true? I mean, I understand we're using a grid to emulate missing observations, but we're still getting the actual observations for those raws, as identified by their raws ID, and using those QA/QC flags in the FW21 data sets to, say whether it's an actual historic or if it's a simulated weather reading, right?
They are flagged, yes. Yep.
It's a little bit of a mix and match, though, I guess is what I was trying to point out.
All right. Any other discussion topics on this? Around the weather data?
Hi, hey Scott, this is Kerry Newman. Sorry, I didn't put my hand up. But to that point, I've got a question in the chat. If say we have historical automated data, but a solar rad wasn't installed until 2009. Currently, we can't use that data for version 4. Will the gap-filled data provide solar rad values prior to 2009, so we can use those values in version 4?
Yes, it does.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Brian. Just to follow up on Carrie's question. So will just the solar rads be replaced in that case, or will the whole R be replaced?
No, it was just the solar rad. It was not the entire record. So if it's just missing, that's where the gap filled versus the backfill comes in. So if it's just missing one one type of observation, it will just backfill that one piece of information. It does not redo the entire record.
Thanks.
Good questions. And I know we got a big group, so I appreciate everybody jumping on and chiming in. All right, I'm going to go through a quick walkthrough of FEMS for those that haven't seen it. And just walk through again what we currently have, what visibility there is. So when you first log in or first get into FEMS, along the top we have both the maps and the download. I'll just briefly go over the download information. So when you click download, you can choose what you're looking for, the station, the weather, and that will be, the observations or forecast weather data. The metadata would be that needed for anything for the for Fire Family Plus. And then from there, you're able to choose either the observation, the forecast, or both the observation and the appended forecast. You can choose your your data format, again, the FW21 or CSV. The difference between the FW21 and the CSV is going to be that the FW21 will be in local station time, and that will be it's UTC with showing the, or it's local time with showing the offset. So the -4, -5, -6, whatever that may be. And that's what is required for inputting into Fire Family Plus. The CSV file will be coming down in UTC. And that is because certain programs, Excel, Power BI, they do a conversion for you. And so if you want to plot that information onto a map or something like that, it's going to convert that the UTC directly into local time based on the station's location. Let's see here. Then it has the date range you can populate in here. The date range, if you're not logged in, you can get 2 weeks historical, 1 week of forecast data. And if you log in, once you log in, you can get the full period of record, which goes back to January 1st of 2000. Start and stop times if you want. You can search stations. So depending on, you can either type in the name or you can type in the station ID. Again, this tells you the information of how long and how many stations you can populate at one time. And then it says, what stations you have identified at that time, and then just the blue data download button. When we get into, and then it just populates in as a zip file. When we get into the map, so the map information you have is, again, you can, if we log in, we're able to choose data based on year. You can use the drop down from the calendar. You can also page through, different calendar years. I'm not logged in, so I can't do that currently. And you can also use a slider bar if you wanted to look back in history. An hour or two, you can do that. If you want to look forward a couple hours, you can easily pan through and see how things have changed throughout time or through those current hours. And if you want to just quickly get back to where you want, you click current hour and voila. The weather data elements are currently being brought in from with me are temperature, relative humidity, precip, the wind speed, the gust speed, solar radiation, and snow flag. So this information is all being brought in from with me. So if we are seeing any information, or if you see something wrong with a station, usually that's going to be a feed from with me. The other problem, or the other common issue that we've been having, is some of the forecast data is not showing, or it's not showing the full set at this time. There's just been some NOAA ingest problems coming from NOAA, because that's where that weather feed comes from. And so when we do get the awareness that that's happening, we do have internal emails that go around and flags basically that pop up that says either the with me feed is down, or there could be a NOAA feed that's happening. We try and let people know if there is that user error at this time. But again, very first things, hopefully in the future we'll have it where warning banner pops up that the information is down at the time, but currently we don't have that. When I get into the snow flag information, I know we don't have a lot of that this year, but as we move towards the fall or move into midwinter timeframe, the snow flag information does not populate from WIMS. So it is very possible that you could be looking at WIMS and seeing a snow flag that's on or off, and where FEMS would be showing it, the opposite. And that is because the snow flag information is being, again, populated from automated satellite and DRI, and they're doing, again, the grid and assessing that pixel for that weather station to either showing it is snow covered or not. It is a good verification to make sure as we move forward, that snow flag is verifying properly automatically. So the new system, we want to make sure that's a great verification piece, is to maybe look back at history. That's something that you guys can easily do, and is a good piece to check on now, is to see if we are having any snow flag issues. You can look back at history, and then you can look back at your WIMS to see if how those are lining up, assuming that your WIMS information is the most accurate, or you can use the interactive snow database available through NOAA. Let's see here. For the legend, I'm going to jump down here. You click the legend up, and you can see that there's several different circles. So we're looking at the black outline, the gray outline, and then the red outline. The black outline for a station is showing that it's an actual observation for that hour. The gray outline is a forecast observation for that, forecast data for that hour. Sorry, I'm mixing terms. And then missing data is that one or more elements from the station sensors are missing for that hour. And then you can see the temperature rating for that time. So you can see the difference. I'll just highlight a couple here. The DeSoto RAWs is showing that it's a forecasted, it's forecast yet for this hour, as opposed to the red station, which has an observation. The dark circle around it shows that that was an actual observation for the hour. One way to verify this information is when you click on the station, it'll bring up the station chart. It'll show you where the historic trend has been for the past few days. Again, this is looking at temperature and relative humidity. You can adjust that to what you would like up here. And then it also shows you your forecast data, your forecast information. To expand this view and get into what is occurring every hour, you click on the expand button, and you can see that this station reports at 21 past the hour. So that would be why this one is showing as an observation. When I click on the DeSoto, you can see that this station does not report until 45 after the hour. FEMS updates every 5 minutes. So within the next 3 to 4 minutes, we should be getting an update, and this one should change from a forecast data to a observation. So that's a little bit behind the scenes on this one. And then you can also click to expand the forecast data. You can see the current hour is highlighted with a black box. Everything above that is forecast information. It's also got the dotted lines as opposed to the solid lines for the observation below that area. Additionally, in here, as we zoom in, let's see here. You will see as we zoom in, more stations populate throughout the area. If a station is not showing, please let us know. Right now, again, we are only looking at permanent RAWS stations that are within WIFME. And so if you have a portable RAWS, an iRAWS, anything on that order, those are not populated inside FEMS at this time. We do plan to add those in the future. It's just going to be a little ways out before that happens. As you zoom in, a second pop-up shows up, which will give you the station trends for, again, what you have toggled on the weather data on this side. So here's temperature trends over the past couple of hours. If you wanted to look and see what the relative humidity trends were, you can also view those for the stations within the view. And you can say, well, there's more stations here listed than there are in my view. That's because FEMS is pulling from the entire map view, so it will pick up all the stations throughout the entire area. Within FEMS, you can also search for a station based on either the name of the station or the station ID. So you can click on that and it'll zoom to that station. Currently, it does bring in the station in the center of the view. So you may have to search around a little bit. We are working on getting that changed so that it does highlight that station of where you chose to search by. So just understand that, yeah, that is coming around to make a couple little changes like that. You can also show your wind direction arrows. That would be which way the wind is blowing towards, and then you could show your wind barbs as well, which shows you which direction the wind is coming from. So depending on how you would like to view the data, you can see the wind barb, traditional meteorological explanation of that, or the wind direction, more like the wind vane on a barn. So let's see, those are about the main areas, that main parts of FEMS right now. As I said, we continue to work on the expansion of FEMS. we have currently are working on getting more weather data summarized. We want to try and get it so that we have the daily precip, the summaries of some more of the mins and maxes of daily information, and summarizing the weather information as a whole. We are also working on bringing in the portable RAWS stations, and eventually working on getting all the other alternate gateway sites, or like weather service, or I'm sorry, airport RAWS station or airport stations, and other non-RAWS sites brought into FEMS. But again, that's a little ways down the road. We are also working on currently getting the actual conversion over in the calculator in FEMS, so that we can start tracking and displaying fire danger information for the area. How this all works is that we have the same, right now, everybody understands that, WIMS and Firefighting Plus, they don't always line up properly. And the reason why is that WIMS is running off of a little bit older of a calculator than what Firefighting Plus is operating on. They weren't able to make that change occur in WIMS to match exactly the Firefighting Plus, or they weren't able to bring in that Firefighting Plus calculator directly into WIMS. And so they edited it the best they could, but obviously with all the lines of codes, they missed a couple things here and there. So they're working on getting all that, cleaned up. FEMS, on the other hand, has the exact same calculator that Firefighting Plus has. And so we're going to be working on that verification to make sure that all the inputs that we have on the FEMS end is going to be showing us the same outputs as Firefighting Plus. But we shouldn't have some of those kind of just basically copy and paste errors that we had occur in WIMS. So that is something to look forward to, and why you keep hearing that WIMS is going to be, or FEMS is going to be, the answer, because just wait for that to happen. Well, that's kind of the behind the scenes of why you're kind of hearing those answers is because FEMS will have that same calculator as Firefighting Plus currently has. But again, we're hoping that we'll start being able to start displaying fire danger next year, by next fire season. But again, as everybody knows, there's a lot of behind the scenes information, a lot of behind the scenes decisions on what is displayed, what can and can't, or should or shouldn't be incorporated in, and how we really want to display that information to make this all work. And there's just a lot of connections that need to happen to make everything lining up, so that we don't have so we're displaying the proper information for you. So it's going to take some time. I just continue to ask for patience as we keep working through this, and understanding you're probably not going to get everything right off the bat. We continue to add features, and as we can build through them and get them displayed to make sure that they're being displayed properly. So all the fantastic things that you hear of FEMS happening, eventually being able to pull in seasonal trend analysis, and being able to get all your matrices, and being able to bring all of your decision points in, and having it all in one-stop shop. Yes, that is the end goal, but it's going to take us some time to get there. It's not going to happen, overnight here for this process. So, let's see here. I want to make sure I copy the provisional data, date, time, roadmap for verification. One last thing. I wanted to make sure everybody does go to the FEMS portal. So the wildland fire application, wildfire.gov application FEMS. And if you go into the announcements, alerts and announcements, this is our easiest place currently to be checking on updates of FEMS. In the next release, we're gonna be having either a big red banner or like a pop-up that you have to click on that'll link you to this site. And this is a place where I can go ahead and add and change information on a daily basis as need be. So as we find issues, as we make corrections, this will be the site that everybody's going to want to be checking for larger announcements, bigger questions, or updates that are occurring to FEMS behind the scenes. It's again somewhere where I can go in and manipulate this data. I can't do it directly on the website as of this time. We're hoping the next couple of releases that will be changing, and we'll be able to have a live feed to that. But unfortunately, right now, this is our best option that we have for me to share information for everybody in regards to FEMS. So So again, that's just at the FEMS, the Wildland Fire Application Portal site, and then again going to the announcements and important updates. Let's see here. That's what I had for this time. I got 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes left, and I don't want to be taking up everybody's time. So any questions with FEMS? And there's nothing secret. Yeah, I don't see who's got their hand raised.
Hi, Scott. It's Dan
Hey, Dan.
Borson.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, I have a question about the National Fuel Moisture Database. When I first came on to doing my job last September, it was one of the first things that was advertised as being part of FEMS, and recent issues have made it a hot topic again. Do you know timetables, or can you explain decisions regarding the National Fuel Moisture Database incorporation into FEMS?
Yeah, certainly. So thank you, Dan, for bringing that up. It was one of the pieces I meant to have on my notes, and I definitely forgot to bring that one up. What's happening with what happened with WFOS? Let's go over that real quick. WFOS had a really the air conditioner that was in the room stopped working, in the closet that the server was in for WFOS overheated, and computers don't like that. So that's why the system went down back in June. And then they got a new server, but unfortunately everything in WFOS is pretty old, especially the National Fuels database. And so they finally got all those reconnections going. They got all the wires connected. So all the information in WFOS should be working now. The one hiccup on this one is the fuels database. Make sure the main piece of this is you need to go to the fuels database directly. You can't use the link through the WFOS site. So if you go to the National Fuels database, you can search that, and everything is working on there, except currently some users are not able to add in their data just yet. Matt is working on that solution. He's not sure why some people are and some people aren't able to add that. He thinks it's, again, part of that server issue, but he is working diligently on that fix. When I hear something, I'll probably try and get some information out about that as soon as I can. Now, what's happening with integrating that system into FEMS? The original plan was to have the fuels database integrated into FEMS. Some information technology decisions had to be made that were above the FEMS level. And because basically it comes down to, they didn't want to be having FEMS being an imp where they could be basically getting in and adjusting information too much. They pulled out that piece and said, okay, the fuels database is going to have its own database of record, and it's going to be a separate system, but FEMS will be the display for the National Fuels database. So yes, FEMS will be displaying the information, but we will not be the record database of record for the fuels database. That will be its separate system. Where that's at currently is hopefully, that piece of it, the database, it still needs to get developed. They're still working on getting the actual forms and how that's going to be input all tidied up. And then we need to figure out how we're going to then bring and display that information through FEMS. So unfortunately, it was supposed to be done this year. That was the original intent. But when that change came around, it was something that hadn't been foreseen. So Travis, did I cover that one properly?
All right, I had to get back to the mute button. I think you got it pretty well covered. I mean, just knowing what I know and trying to assure people, we've definitely heard all the concerns about it, and we're pushing as hard as we can to put something together. And the way an analogy I use is I've got a ball and I'm ready to toss it, but I don't necessarily know who to toss it to or when they're going to catch it. But we are answering those questions.
I appreciate that thorough response, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I know we're at the top of the hour, so if you need to jump off, I understand. And I do have another call, but I want to see if there's anybody else who has any questions I might be able to hit real quick or cover. And if you have feedback of how this went, if it's too much information, not enough, let me know. Shoot me an email. It doesn't bother me. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the information the best that I can here. All right. I'm not hearing any other questions, so everybody have a great afternoon. Be safe out there, and we'll catch you in a month. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you.